Uh, Good morning, all the members present. Respected past president of the ICAI, Amarjit Chopra sir, my co-chair, co-convener of this Center for Audit Quality, C.A. Ranjit Agarwal ji, the other two panelists, C.A. Lalit Kumar ji, C.A. Hasmukh Dedia, and all professional colleagues who have joined the Quality Cafe, an initiative started by the Directorate of Center for Audit Quality for the benefit of all the members, how the audit is to be dealt and how we can we can have the better quality in our audit. So no one raise fingers on the auditors. Friends, I'm happy to welcome you all on this Saturday morning, where we are going to discuss yet another important element of audit quality. We already had 3 quality cafe, and today we are going to discuss on importance of audit planning. The planning cannot be undermined, beginning from day-to-day activities to managing finance for ourselves, vacations, professional commitments, treasury functions in an organizations, etc. And the list is endless where we need planning. In fact, we all have planned our morning today also, that how this Sunday or Saturday or this weekend is going to be. Likewise, we need to plan our audit also. Friends, just this Quality Cafe is for that purpose. And I'm sure friends who have joined virtually, they have also ticked their calendar that they need to join this Quality Cafe today. I'm glad we prioritized Quality Cafe over the other commitments. Most of us prefers to plan our day and activities so that we do not miss out on any of the important tasks, and at the same time, we have a productive day as per our expectations. Similarly, in our professional front too, as an auditor, we need to plan an audit as I discussed you earlier. It would not only help us achieve our objective, but it would also help the team to perform effectively by focusing on areas requiring utmost attention and detailing. Today's session, we will deliberate on the importance of audit planning, while the requirement and guidelines for planning an audit of the financial statement is listed under Standards on Auditing number 300. We shall discuss the practical concerns on audit planning. And we are having 3 panelists today for this. I'm sure after listening all these 3 panelists and to the experience of our esteemed panelists, the auditor fraternity will give more emphasis to audit planning. In addition to audit planning, we will also discuss today aspects pertaining to the professional skepticism. Friends, professional skepticism is the heart of the audit. SA 200 deals with the professional skepticism, and it is defined to be an attribute that includes a questioning mind, being alert to condition which may indicate possible misstatement due to error or fraud, and a critical assessment of audit evidence. And we are known for that our mind should always be questioning on various things which are required to be questions at the time of audit. While we can maintain professional skepticism, how can we document all that came to our mind while we were conducting the audit? At a larger stage, if we are to substantiate our professional skepticism, how do we do that? What is the evidence? How we should create documents? And if there are any lapses, then lapses in challenging the management and absence of the professional skepticism will be viewed very seriously by the audit regulators across the globe. And as our economy is also globalized, our audit affecting not only in India, but globally. So let's discuss and deliberate and have a clear understanding on the concerns that may arise in future because of the planning and the skepticism which we use in the audit of corporate world or in any assurance services which we are providing to our esteemed client. Friends, before the deliberation starts and each panelist is being invited to share their views, I would request the co-convener of Center for Audit Quality, CA Ranjit Agarwal ji, who is in third term of the council, a very senior professional who is always helping hand to all the professional brothers and even to me also as a guide. We will request, or I would rather say I will request Ranjit Agarwal ji to introduce all the panelists who have joined for the deliberation. Over to Ranjit Agarwal.
Thank you very Durgesh Bhai, convener of this Audit Quality Center, our very respected past president Amarjit ji Chopra, Lalit ji and Hasmukh ji, two co-speaker of this very important Quality Cafe discussion on audit planning and professional skepticism. As you all are aware, that we have standard SA 300 for audit planning of the financial statement. We have SA 300 how to do the audit procedure, perform in an audit evidence obtained, and we have SA 200 for professional skepticism. If you go through the entire code of ethics, most of the place you will find professional skepticism, because the distinguished mark of our accounting profession is that profession is the acceptance of the responsibility of the accountant is to act in the public interest. And that's why this professional skepticism has become an attitude, how to deal with this. So to deal with all this very important topic of planning and skepticism, we have three very senior and erudite professionals to discuss this Quality Cafe. I start with our very own past president, Amarjit ji Chopra, although he does not need any introduction, but as a customary, he has been the past president of ICA, and I remember when he was the past president in 2009, he was the person who spearheaded entire India's implementation in our audit profession. I have seen him working most of his presidential tenure in implementing how this India's can be implemented. He is a highly acclaimed CA with more than 45 years of experience. Sir has contributed significantly to the professional development of the auditing and accountancy discipline in India over the last so many years. He holds the position of independent director also in various public and private sector companies and banks, and his contribution to the profession is commendable, phenomenal, because since last 45 years, whenever any person needs, after demitting the president office, he is always available for the student and member of ICI. His excellent auditical skill and thorough subject knowledge binds the audience of all ages, a very humble and thorough professional and gentleman, and above all, very good human being and a family person. Welcome Chopra sir for this Quality Cafe. I welcome him. We have another very eminent CA, Hasmukh Didia sir. He is a practicing CA. He has more than 25 years of professional experience in handling audit, tax matter, and business restructuring assignment of several clients in public and private sector. He has been a faculty member, paper writer of several seminar, workshop, and held by WRC and ICI of our institute. And he also associated with the Chambers of Commerce and Industry Association. Welcome, Hasmukh Dedia ji, for this quality cafe session. And we have CA Lalit Kumar, a very young and erudite professional practicing CA with large size firm. In addition to rendering assurance service, he is also responsible for quality assurance, risk management, and other ethical requirement of the firm. He has 23 years of more post-qualification experience, and he has been associated with the institute in various forms, co-opted member and faculty and other things. So welcome Lalitji for this quality cafe session, and over to Durgesh bhai. Thank you.
Thank you, Ranjit bhai, for introducing all the panelists to this virtual gathering of chartered accountants. And let us start today the sessions where we will be dealing with the audit planning as well as the professional skepticism. And to start with, I would request Lalit Kumarji to say on the importance of audit planning, how the audit planning is important, how it should be done, what it should have, and how it will impact the quality of the audit. So over to Lalitji.
Thank you so much, Durgesh-ji, Ranjit-ji, and Center for Audit Quality for giving me this opportunity to invite. I'm particularly very, very glad that I'm on this panel with Chopra Sahib. Sir, I must tell this forum that the first ever public speaking I did was sitting beside Chopra ji in 2001 when AS22 was introduced. It was Karol Bagh Study Circle, sir. So a long way. I mean, you've been a guide, teacher to us, and I'm really humbled actually. I mean, to talk about audit planning in front of Chopra Sahib, but I will try and explain what we have been thinking about audit planning as a topic, you know. So Durgesh ji, when he was introducing the topic, and I was wondering that he has almost touched the core of the audit planning when he said that we all do planning in our day-to-day life, be it buying a refrigerator, be it trying to, you know, plan a holiday. Anything that we do involves the planning. If you look at what is planning in general means deciding in advance what is that you are going to do to achieve a particular objective. And when you start with the thought process, the first thing that comes to your mind is what can go wrong if I am on this journey or if I want to achieve this objective. If things can go wrong, what are the things that one can do to make sure that things do not go wrong? What are the resources that are required to obtain a particular objective? Is there a specific skill set that is required to, you know, achieve the objective? For example, if I'm planning to go for a holiday in Leh Ladakh, and one would definitely want to consider the lack of oxygen there and want to plan, improve health or carry oxygen, you know, as you are going to live. So, and when it is a teamwork, you want to know who is going to do it and how. So essentially, it is all about thinking, pondering, evaluating on the path that one will follow, on things that one will do to achieve an objective. The other thing that also is required when you do planning in general is there is always a plan B, right? why plan B is always talked about, because things may not go as planned. You may encounter new things, new events, new circumstances, which may require you to evolve your plan for a particular objective. This is what we generally understand about planning. If we read management books, when they talk about planning in general business management, this is all what we hear. Now, when we translate this concept to audit of financial statements, what would it mean? So obviously, one has to see what is the objective of audit of financial statements. The objective is that the auditor issues an opinion by maintaining his independence, by performing procedures which are relevant on the financial statements. So opinion is an independent examination of the financial statements. That now two objectives are to be fulfilled, or rather three, say, that the financial statements are free of material misstatements, which could be caused or which could exist due to fraud or error. So both the aspects are to be considered. There could be a fraudulent misstatement, or there could be that can occur in preparation and presentation of financial statements. And the second aspect is that the financial statements are prepared in all material respects in accordance with the financial reporting framework. So this is the objective of the auditor. Now, if we look at the risk, what is the risk? Now, is there a single risk, or there are multiple risks? The risks are at two levels that are examined in an audit. One is at the financial statement level, and the other is at level. If we need to address the risks of what can go wrong, the first thing that we need to do is carry out risk assessment process, which is covered by our SA 315. We have to design our responses to those risks, which essentially means determining the nature, timing, and extent of procedures that one will perform. This is covered by SA 330. We also need to see what is that we will classify as a material misstatement in the financial statement. Not 1,000 rupees, not 2,000 rupees. What is the benchmark? The benchmarks are given in, how do you apply the concept of materiality is dealt with in SA 320, which tells you how do you determine overall materiality, how do you go and apply materiality to a caption. And then when you have performed procedures, you have found misstatements in the financial statement. And misstatements are of two types, whether adjusted misstatement, it could be unadjusted misstatement. How do you deal with those misstatements when you make your report under SA 700 or 705? And then the specific standard on entities using a service organization, right? So these are 4 or 5 standards that have been given by the institute that I would put in a bucket, saying these are the standards which one must comply with when you are trying to do audit planning. This is the theory part of it. Now, these are lengthy, big standards. What is the practical aspect of planning an audit? Practical aspect of planning the audit is, of course, first to understand the requirement of the standard. Then gather all the information that you are required to gather to carry out your risk assessment, which will include your preliminary audit activities, which will include obtaining understanding of the entity, which will include understanding of the internal controls. Once you have done all that, you will come to a residual risk of misstatement or risk of material misstatement, for which you will design the procedures. The what does it result into when you complete your planning, when you comply with all these standards? This will result into an overall audit strategy and audit plan that one is required to comply with when audit. First thing that is very important is, this is what we normally talk about, a model called plan, do, review. Essentially, the message is that 60% of the effort that you are planning to put in an audit should be in the planning of audit itself. If one has correctly identified the risks, appropriately understood the controls, and appropriately designed the procedures that need to be performed to mitigate battle is achieved. More than half of the battle is achieved. What remains after is making sure that the engagement team that is allocated executes the procedure as designed to be executed, and then partner carries out a review to make sure that everything that we planned was done. Planning also has a very crucial concept of risk assessment discussions amongst the engagement team. Once the engagement team has gathered the information about the entity, environment, controls, and has made an assessment of risk, there has to be a discussion amongst the engagement team to understand or brainstorm where and how financial statements can get materially misstated, either by error or by fraud, and what is the procedure that the team can design to mitigate that risk in an audit. So gather information, analyze, brainstorm, and then respond to your risk. And the last thing in the planning, which is very important, is it is not something that you do at the beginning of the engagement. It is a continuous and iterative process, which means as you are progressing in audit, there could be a situation that you had not envisaged earlier, but it now requires change in your audit strategy. When we say audit strategy, it could be change in your materiality, it could be change in the composition of team, it could be change in the timing of the procedure, when you want to perform the procedure. It could be change in the sample size, or for example, where you had thought that the control is designed and implemented properly, but when you actually went for testing of operating effectiveness, you came to know that the initial assessment about the control was incorrect. Possibly you would then be required to extend your sample sizes for that particular population. What I'm trying to say is, it is a continuous and iterative process. How does it help? The planning helps greatly in an audit. I think an auditor, when plans the audit, is able to identify potential problems upfront, which we call as risk or significant risk, can design appropriate attention to all those matters. The audit, it also helps auditor in planning what kind of skills that are required to be allocated for the engagement. How would you direct and supervise the people who are working on the engagement? Are there any experts that I will be requiring to do the audit? Is there coordination that I need to do with other auditors involved? It could be a joint audit situation. It could be an SS600 situation. So in all, when you consider all these aspects, you are able to perform audit, which will meet, to my mind, which should meet the standards requirement, will make the audit more efficient and effective. When I say efficient, which means lesser effort going in the audit, effort that is going is very pointed and you know what the pointed results that you want. When I say effective, it essentially means that as an auditor, you would have discharged your obligations in accordance with the professional standards, and the risk of uh, bad quality audit goes down to a very large extent. I think this is what the importance of the planning is. I would also, request participants to consider some of the names or some of the situations where audit profession has come under scrutiny. For a moment, we are not saying that auditor was wrong or the company was right or something has occurred. The more I ponder, I've always thought about, was there something wrong in the planning? Did the auditor not plan the audit properly? Whether auditor did not have the understanding of the industry. And I'll quote one example of a corporate failure. It's WorldCom occurred several years back. The entity was misstating financial statements by capitalizing repair and maintenance expenses in the fixed assets. And the audit team did the audit. They looked at the fixed assets additions. They were explained that I think it's fiber optic cable work that is going on in the country, and therefore huge capitalization is occurring. And some testing was done to see if there are errors, but not fraud. If there are errors, an opinion was issued. Later on, it was found that fixed assets were overstated, expenses were understated. The scheme was there was journal entries that were posted, not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, over the entire financial year, which debited fixed assets and credited the expenses. Several things that come to one's mind is, was the industry really going through fiber optic cables? I mean, fiber optic cable work in that country had been completed a year back, so perhaps the auditor was unaware about the developments that have happened in the industry and the company itself. Auditors should have planned to test journal entries. The company was a listed entity. The company was under tremendous pressure to show profits. And the auditor should have evaluated how, if company wants to show profit, how will they show profit? One of the possible ways is understating expense. When they want to understate expense, there could be only two ways. One is you don't book expense, or if you book expense, put it in the balance sheet. So if the thought process could have been there at the planning stage, possibly, a better result could have been achieved. So the quantum of information that you gather, how you process that information, how you apply that information is what planning is. And really, it is 60% of the effort. And if you do it right, I believe the audit would meet the requirements of the standard and will be of high quality. That is it from my side, sir, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Lalitji. You explained the audit planning in a very right way, and we will be having questions too for you and some questions from the public at large, whatever we receive. But we have certain things for you where we need your guidance. So the quality with respect to audit planning is concerned can be improved upon. Now, let us take the second subject which we are going to deal with today, and that is the professional skepticism, where Hasmukh, the ADIG, is there to guide all of us. As was told, he represents reasonably good size firm. And the theme beside this quality cafe is 1% we are taking from a large size firm, 1% from a medium size firm, and 1%
who is from the audit, who is basically audit committee chairman also. So the client perspective also come, how the audit committee is looking after the audit. So we get the right perspective of the quality in the audit. And that is why Hasmukh Bhai is there. And I would request Hasmukh Bhai to please share his views with respect to the maintaining of the professional skepticism. Voice has gone, Hasmukh Bhai, again. No.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, please. Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Durgeshi. I hope I am audible.
Yes, sir. Audible,
Yeah. Yeah.
loud and clear and visible too.
Good morning to all. Thanks, CAQ, for giving me this opportunity of sharing some of my thoughts on a very hot topic of the day. Like Lalitji, I would also, express my feeling being proud of sharing a screen with Chopra Saab, from whom I have learned a lot through his public pronouncements and through his public appearances. Coming straight to the subject, I think regulators have been criticizing auditors for not practicing adequately one of the important traits expected of an auditor, that is professional skepticism. Okay, we have recent NEFRA reports and all based on that, but several years back, European regulators, Australian regulators, New Zealand regulators have expressed this kind of reservations on the audit quality, and therefore, so in Indian context, with NEFRA coming up with several AQR several entities, this subject has again gathered the momentum and attention of both auditing professionals as well as the industry. And as rightly mentioned in the opening remark by Yogesh, skepticism is all about not having a tendency of taking things for granted. Simply say that standard defines this. The term is professional skepticism. The term professional by itself, implies some kind of a knowledge, some kind of a experience, some kind of a training, some kind of a professional expertise in a subject. And with that, the skepticism is added, and therefore, together it would connote a kind of a mental attitude of questioning mindset. If auditor is not questioning, or he does not have a questioning mindset, he is failing at his duty at ab initio. Being alert to conditions that may indicate possible or probable misstatements in the financial statements on which he is going to apply his audit strategies and audit verification procedures, as also the critical assessment of audit evidence. Now, these are the three facets given by the SA 200 for skepticism. In a simpliciter word, I would say that auditors should be hard to convince, but not impossible. If a convincing evidence is given to him in a proper manner, he should be willing to be accepting. Questioning mindset does not mean you question everyone, you question everything that comes across your audit process. That will take you to another arena, which is not audit but an investigation. thin line of difference between the two. If you have a reason to believe, if you have a reason, if you have some indication based on the record or documents or evidences that you have gone through, that things can go wrong and possibly the representations or information that is provided to you may or may not be fully correct. In those cases, yes, investigation or questioning everything is something which is anticipated or expected by the auditing literature. But otherwise, in a general scenario, a questioning mindset in the sense that trust but verify. Trust you, but I would like to verify. That attitude should be practiced not only at the beginning of the audit, throughout the audit, at the conclusion stage of audit, and at the stage when one is meeting those charged with governance of the audit clients, that could be board of managing trustees, board of directors, or audit committee. Even at that stage, some kind of a skepticism is needed. Now, it is easy to say questioning mindset, being alert to possibility that something can go wrong, critical assessment, auditing literature is full of all this. What are the essential ingredients to inculcate the professional skepticism to begin with? I would personally think the first and foremost and very, very important is independence mindset. A mindset which is not independent cannot be practicing enough skepticism. For example, a junior manager of an audit is given a charge of discussion or initial discussion with a large entity CFO or a group CFO, and he is made to sit and discuss with him. Okay, he is belonging to a firm which is respectable, but his tenure, his setup, his training, his articulation of questioning, all that would put him under pressure, and he is a person who is much higher in the stature, in the experience, in the so the clients have this habit of creating an atmosphere. I can share one recent experience. We were meeting MD for large PSU, having a 5 lakh crore of a balance sheet. Meeting that MD we were told, is very, very difficult. Getting his time is very, very difficult. Before getting his time, we are made to wait in a PS cabin for some time. Then, some 2 persons come and escort us and take us to this. A junior person would get subdued by all this atmosphere, and that skepticism which otherwise is there in his mind would perhaps get dried up in the discussion, because he thinks he's meeting a much higher posture person. And that's what I think the first and foremost virtue or precondition for skepticism is independent mindset. Without that, one cannot be practicing skepticism enough. Anderson auditing requirements maintain that condition of an unbiased mind. Now, by unbiased mind, we mean both the ways. Neither unduly doubting nor unduly easy to accept everything put before him. That attitude is also not unbiased, and everything doubting is also not unbiased. So that unbiased mindset is another precondition for effective practicing of professional skepticism. Gathering objective evidence information about the client, of course, is again a very, very important ingredient. Not readily getting satisfied with evidence that is less than persuasive. It can be explained by saying, like trust deficit. So it is not that you trust somebody, but you trust. But at the same time, ask questions, verify, get satisfactory explanation, and then go ahead. That's the part. We are already aware how regulators have criticized. Regulators expect auditors to practice the skepticism to the best of its possible manner. Not only that, regulators expect that for audit audit process should be demonstrative of the fact that you had in course of audit is the skepticism. And how that can be demonstrated, we will see in the question answers or in some other proceedings in the course today. I only confine myself to some of the practical examples that we come across in a day-to-day experience of our audit. That where we could have uh, antenna could have kind of given us a signal that here is something that I should be stopping the process, I should be asking more questions, I should be seeking more information. Some of them are given in the standard evidence, like some evidence which you already have, or some understanding which you already have, and then some other evidence is given to you. Hello. Hello. Sorry for this technical glitch. I think there's some net issue. I wouldn't know where I stopped. So I was saying I was on the topic that some of the practical examples I would like to share at this thing that some of them are already given in the standard, that some evidence which contradicts your already given understanding or your already other evidence with you, if there is a contradiction, then auditors should be having ability to sense inconsistency in the information or the sources of the information and probe such things, such matters into detail. The documents or evidences given to you are prima facie having some lapses, prima facie having some inconsistencies, or responses to your inquiries are not convincing enough. That also should raise the antenna for you to deep dive those matters, inquire further. SA 240 gives fraud possibility factors. If those factors are existing, obviously skepticism has to be at its best. Nothing should be accepted at the face value, and everything should go by a proper procedure of the audit verification or seeking the explanation, documenting the questions as well as the explanation received. Circumstances sometimes give rise for auditor to decide on following an additional audit procedures than what is stated in the auditing literature or the auditing standards. For example, when in the process of audit you are circulating the direct confirmations, many a time there is a tendency on part of the clients to resist sending the confirmation to trade payables or credit balances. They want to tell us that be practical, understand our business. Counterparty is not aware that there is a credit balance in our books. And please consider this. By sending confirmation, you are making them aware. Now, such matters or such occasions, would make us change our audit strategy, change our verification strategy in the manner that both we do not be unduly unfair to the client's practical implication request. All the time we do not, surrender to clients being practical. Being professional is what we should be. Being practical is for the client to that. There could be some instances like just in the test of design initial audit process. You are scanning the ledgers or you are going through the scrolling down the ledgers. You find that trade receivable, trade payables, opening balance is the closing balance, or in some of the cases, no invoices, no payments, no entries, nothing coming from cash and bank register, nothing coming from sales or purchase register. Only at the fag end of the year, some journal entries are coming. Such things should raise the doubt. Such things should raise the additional questions from the auditor, convincing explanation from the client. If this is not there in one of the NEFRA report, this exactly is questioned, that whether this was questioned or not is not evident from the documentation that has been provided to NEFRA, and therefore NEFRA came to conclusion that adequate professional skepticism was not exercised in course of the audit. Slow and non-moving inventory is something that we all are aware and we all question on that. We all seek proper explanation. Clients try to cover up those matters by saying that what value and how the stock is of the nature which does not deteriorate in value just because it is not moving or so. All those matters will have to kind of need additional audit procedures, need additional this thing. Scrap sale is one of the instances we all check scrap sale with a very, very enhanced enthusiasm and enhanced antenna raising. But generation of scrap is seldom questioned. Who decides? Who decides generation? Whether the item which is sent to the scrap yard, is it done by a proper authority? Is there a maker checker? Is there a control system? Is it not possible that some of the good material is being sent to the scrap yard or being hand in glove with the scrap dealer? Whether such matters need to be probed in detail, and whatever probe can be decided will depend on what amount and what adequacy of skepticism that we are exercising. Sometimes in a course of audit, we find that like client is into a specific business, and one or two transactions are not in ordinary, do not look to be in ordinary course of business. The terms of the contract for one or two matters that come to your notice are not fitting into the kind of the contract that client has been entering into. Those things, if we do not question, we again will find it difficult to defend a regulatory or a review question that I have exercised enough skepticism. Related party transactions has always been a focus of the audit, of the regulators, of everyone. And therefore, I don't have to say in detail that that is something which needs a focused attention, a proper questioning attitude, a proper arm's length matters, satisfaction, all that will have to be kind of exercised. One item in the audit, which I personally find in my 30 years of audit experience very, very challenging, is audit of estimates. Large number of estimates or judgments are made by the management in course of preparation and presentation of the financial statement. For example, if you are doing a builder developer entity, and large number of them are listed now, the working of the builder developer itself starts with the estimates, a 3-year or a 5-year cycle of a project to come up and complete an infra project, a large road asset where financial understanding is done with a concessionaire there. You have a 4 or 5 years estimates with you. You start only with estimate. Your revenue recognition, your expenditure recognition, etc., all start with estimate. And therefore, estimate auditing is a very, very challenging task where again, a very heightened professional skepticism is called for. And if we fail to do this and if we fail to properly document and demonstrate this, we would be finding it difficult to defend in a regulatory text. Having said what are the positives, what are the examples, let me very quickly in a couple of minutes, Chairman Sir, deal with some of the limiting factors which in today's practical world limit the skepticism. The first and foremost, I said independence of mind. This independence can stream for several challenges to independence can stream from several factors. If your firm or associate of your firm is doing some large other services, obviously your independence can be under question. I am not necessarily saying your independence is doubted, but it is under question. So that is first and foremost. One thing which may surprise some of you, but I personally believe highly automated work papers are a challenge to skepticism. The focus of the audit manager and the focus of the audit staff is to complete that automated work papers so that partner can see completeness of that review, and the focus little bit gets diverted from the facts or the analytical part of the numbers being reported upon. Forgive me for saying this. I am not against automation. I am all for automation. In today's world, audit cannot be completed without automated paperwork. But extensive thing of doing that, or if your firm is doing that, there should be one third eye who is looking the numbers, who is looking the client's explanation, who is looking the matters for attention of partners, who is looking the query sheet, over and above just paperwork. That is, I think, a thing. Clickbait approach can also be sometimes a challenge to the skepticism because your focus is on completing what is there in the checklist and you don't think beyond that. These are some of the challenges because timelines today's audit words are also a challenge. 2 days after the audit committee is there and you are still struggling with the numbers and you are burning midnight oil, that time obviously your focus would be on a automated work paper and a checklist. This, according to me, are impediments or challenges. Time pressures I have already dealt with. Inadequate resources, auditing profession is facing the challenge of a qualified and proper resources, and that can be a challenge. The overall challenge could be culture. The tone at the top in the firm can also be a challenge. This is what my initial thoughts on skepticism came. I think I would deal some of them in course of the question answers.
Right.
Or would expect to get guidance from Chopra.
Thank you. Thank you, Asmuk Bhai, for dealing the professional skepticism subject and introduction of the same for all the members virtually present here. And now is the turn of I would say, accounting guru, I would say the auditing guru and guru for all of us, Amarjit Chopra sir. Yesterday his call was there and he was asking me, Durgesh, who will be moderating? How I can miss the opportunity, sir? I will remain present and I will always try to find the time whenever Amarjit Chopra sir is there, and that too. So there is lot to learn from him as far as the audit is concerned, as far as the accounting is concerned. So I never wanted to miss this opportunity, and I said I will be there. Sir, thank you very much. I now request you to please address all the participants. And the subject is open to you, sir, for both the subject where you can have the skepticism as well as planning, where you can have your views, how these both are important and what is being missed by others too, which you can cover.
Thank you very much, Durgesh Bhai. And thanks to Ranjit ji. And I really feel humbled with all the kind words that each one of you have used. See, so far as Lalit is concerned, I think he has been one of those assets that the institute lost out. And it has been someone else's gain all this period. He should have been in the institute, but I think the folly has been ours that we find him to be outside the institute. Because at that time, besides, of course, Dr. Kamal Gupta, when I came to the council, Mr. Ashok Arora, Avinash Chandraji, there are two fellows I will never forget in my life who would stand up and say what is right and what is wrong. They were juniors, but I must say that they had the courage of conviction to talk. One was Lalit and one was Ashish Bansal for that matter. And I think we lost out on both of them. It was a great loss to the institute. And I only wish that we don't keep on repeating those kind of things in future. Thanks, Hasmukh ji, for all your kind words also. I have been reading your materials also on the various forums and in the various publications. Ranjit ji in absentia, in any case. So far as this topic,
I'm
so
there.
you are there. So you are there.
Yes, sir.
Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry. and not in absentia, in presentia. Let me put it that way. Okay. Let me say that this topic is very, very close to one's heart. So far as audit planning is concerned and professional skepticism is concerned, these more or less go hand in hand if you really ask me. There can be no audit planning without professional skepticism. If we think that we can plan an audit without professional skepticism, it can't happen under any circumstances. To me, the audit planning is most important from two angles also. Forget about the other part of it. There are two more reasons for which audit planning must take place. One is that it results into uninterrupted flow of the work. And it results into the cost effectiveness and time effectiveness. I think that's very important. If you have planned anything properly, you will be able to save the cost also, you will be able to save the time also, and there will be an uninterrupted flow of the work. But one thing goes without saying, I think Lalit said it. You plan a visit, you plan any trip, you have to plan it. When husband or the wife now, if both are earning, they budget their expenditure. After that's also planning for the month, how much they have to save. Now, whether you have to buy the house or you have to be on rent, that's also a part of your planning for future, for that matter. So everything, now people even plan the children for that matter, plan the marriage and plan the children also in the lighter vein of it. I think everything goes with the planning in the life. And when you don't plan, you plan to fail. I think that's the way I look at it. So planning is a must. And I think in planning, which I think Lalit made a very subtle reference to that, understanding the entity and understanding the industry is very important if you want to plan any audit for that matter. Unfortunately, what happens is, I am talking of the small and medium practitioners, it might be happening even in some of the bigger cases also. That we don't understand the industry, we don't understand the client, and we start auditing. And it has not started happening now. I think we did our articles between 1971 to 75. At that time also more or less the position was the same. Whenever a client would come, the principal would say, please go and audit. So to me, what is more important is you must be able to understand as a senior first, what is the nature of your client? What are the processes? Which process is more critical? In which process there can be more losses? In which processes, if you exercise proper control, you can save the costs. I think that's very important from the angle of the audit. Now, if a particular client that you are dealing with has in most of the cases has a job work going on, he keeps on sending the material for the job work. I think to my mind, number one, their contracts have to be evaluated. We have to say and the audit planning that their contracts will be evaluated. The number of days that the material remains with the job worker, whether he is meeting the schedule, and if he is not meeting the schedule, in that particular case, if we are losing out on our clients, that becomes a matter of the audit planning in any case. In some of the cases, you might be losing out on GST benefit also. If the goods are not returned within a specified period. And how these goods which are lying with the job worker, which belong to me in any case, these are physically verified if there are cut-off procedures, if there are cut-off dates in between. That's extremely important. Now, unless I understand this, how can I plan the work? There's no way that I can plan the work. One is understand your client, understand the industry. I think he gave the example of the WorldCom. Forget about WorldCom today, Lalit. You look at the last 3 years from a different perspective. COVID happened. If COVID happened, what are those industries? What are those businesses where there is a threat of going concern itself? Look at the restaurant business, look at the traveling business, for that matter, the tour operators business. In some of the cases, even the airline business has been under threat. So if all those businesses are under threat and still they are being considered as a going concern, I think one of the planning points today would be to assess whether it's a going concern or it's not a going concern. If I have to send my article today to a tour operator, very frankly, if not this year, last year, if I was to send him to audit the accounts of the tour operator, I would have told him, please look at the going concern concept. Whatever management may represent, please get into that particular part of it. And that would have resulted in the professional skepticism. Because the management may keep on saying anything under ST 580. They may say everything is absolutely fine. But my professional skepticism, my ability to question their judgment has to be there. And how do I question it? I question it only if I am aware of the industry, I am aware of the entity, I am aware of the business of the client. If I am not aware of it, I will not be able to challenge it. Professional skepticism is a must under all. When I plan the audit, if I don't have the professional skepticism, how can I plan? How do I assess the risk? If I am going to make the risk assessment, and after risk assessment, what is going to happen? That I have to do the questioning about that particular risk. That how you have actually assessed that risk, evaluated that risk, or how you have mitigated that particular risk. And if I have not questioned that, I think whatever Jadhia Sahab said about NFRA, that question is going to be raised, if not today, tomorrow. You can be rest assured about it. And then first thing that I have to challenge myself at the stage of the audit planning itself, one may say that this may not be justified, is whether I am really independent or not. I have to assess my independence even at the stage of accepting the assignment. In one of the cases, NFRA has declared that the appointment of the auditor was void ab initio. And it's not a small firm. Let's be very clear about it. Their parent organization had been rendering all those services which were debarred under Section 144 of the Companies Act abroad. How you could consider yourself to be independent? And if you are not independent, there's no way that professional skepticism will come in. You can be rest assured about it. And I think to bring in more of the professional skepticism, Section 144 has been brought in. And if you look at Section 144, what does it say? It says directly, indirectly, by yourself or by your holding or by your network companies, any of the firms for that matter. It does not restrict it to you. It actually extends to your network also. And if the parent in the network has rendered the services of that particular magnitude and you still consider yourself to be independent and you still consider that you will be able to exercise professional skepticism, I think it's foolhardy. And if you read the article by the present NFRA chairman on 26th of July, what he has said in Financial Express, he says, all those auditors who are compromising with the, who are foregoing their independence will not be spared. That's the statement, which is a very, very clear statement today. One of the things which I was in the WIRC program also in NFRA only a few days back, and I said one of the things that NFRA is going to challenge you under all circumstances is your independence. The first questioning will come from them. How did you determine your independence? How did you assess your independence? And if you never questioned it, you couldn't have planned certain things. You couldn't have got into the professional skepticism for that particular matter. When you plan the audit, you plan even to look at the minutes book. Why do you look at the minute books? You tell me. You look at the minutes book because you want to find out whatever is there in the financial statement, whether it is being contradicted by any of the proceedings which have taken place in the board meeting or the audit committee meeting. Because there could be certain things which might have been said there. Believe me, in one of the bank audits, we were only auditing the bank. A claim came for the refund of the interest, etc., from the client, from the borrower. So there were floods, etc., etc., and because of this, we could not fulfill these things. So we want the refund of the interest for that particular period because we were not able to function. The bank was on the verge of giving it, and we said it very clearly. Please read their board report. The board report says everything during the year was absolutely fine. They do not even mention of any kind of flood. They do not mention of any kind of interruption in their profile, in their business. Where is the question of any floods in that particular case? They have really said that their business expanded during this particular year. They never refer to any of the flood situation, etc., etc. I think the DSR made a very valid point with regard to scrap. In most of the companies, you have the sale of the scrap, but where are the records for the generation of the scrap? I think one of the points of when you plan for the audit is also for the scrap audit. After all, if the scrap is to be generated, now there could be certain cases where you tell the job worker that you will retain the scrap. You send him the brass for the forging, you say that you will retain the brass. Now, if you have to find out what is the cost benefit in doing forging yourself or in forging to be done by the other, you will definitely take into consideration the brass which is retained by the other person. Why not? And in that particular case, whatever brass, if suppose that contract does not say that the brass will be retained by me, it means the brass will come to me. If the brass is going to come to me, in that case, it will be a part of the planning of the audit that I have to necessarily audit what kind of brass, what quantities of the brass have come back to me, and how I am going to look at the generation of this brass scrap and how it has been sold out. I think these are very essential points. Because when I talk of the planning means that I will sit in-house, I will review all my previous reports. Basically, whatever previous reports have been there, previous objections have been there, which have been overcome. Now, one of the points which probably NFRA will get into and is getting into is that you raise certain objections. But how did you meet those objections? Your papers, working papers do indicate that you raise particular issue with regard to the actuarial valuation. But whether you obtain that actuarial valuation later on or not, or if you obtain that actuarial valuation, whether you actually went into the assumptions or presumptions of that actuarial valuation or not. Suppose you have said somewhere that the statutory non-compliances have been there with regard to the provident fund or with regard to ESI or with regard to anything else. Now you have raised the objection, but how did you meet that objection? You have not mentioned in Caro. You have not mentioned in Caro that there were statutory non-compliances. Now, one of the points as audit committee chairman, one has been asking the auditors all the time, and that's a part of the planning. That how did you pick up the sample? What was your modus operandi of picking up the sample? Because most of the time, the sample which is picked up is all good. Believe me, there have been private sector banks in which only 25 of the advances accounts and maybe 10 of the deposit accounts have been picked up and the audit has been completed. Now, all those 10 accounts did not reveal anything. Those 25 accounts didn't reveal anything, and the business was absolutely as usual. And when the RBI inspectors have come in, they have found large kind of divergences. So that has to be a part of the planning. No? You can't leave it there as to what you are trying to do. Because when you pick up a sample, how you are going to pick up that sample? It could be smaller account, it could be bigger amount, it could be problematic account, it could be an NPA account already, because if there is an NPA account, I think your working is going to be different. Then you will be looking only at the security angle, whether the security has not been frittered away during this particular period. So even there, the planning is going to be different. If a particular bank is actually having, now take the case of Central Bank of India in some of the years, they were having a gross NPA level of 20%. Whereas some other bank might be having a very good ratio, in maybe 4 or 5%. So when there is a 20% ratio, there you will be looking at more of the filtering away of the securities. And of course, the failures of the monitoring system. Whereas in this particular case, you will be trying to identify if in the industry, the ratio of NPA is about 10% or 11% or 9%, how his NPA level is only 4% or 5% or 3%. That is where the RBI has in recent times come down heavily, even in the case of the private sector banks, and have been able to identify huge divergences in the case of the NPAs. So I think somewhere or the other, I again say I have to understand the nature of the industry, nature of my own client, nature of its business, nature of its functioning, nature of the internal control, nature of the monitoring, etc. So far as that particular part is concerned. And then I think Lalit talked of engagement team. Definitely engagement team is very, very important. You can't give a scrutiny of a ledger or data analytics to one of the juniors. It has to be through the senior. Now, one of the points which is being raised by NFRA is, I don't know how to describe it. They say that you had an engagement partner, you had a review partner. Review partner has reviewed the papers but signed it, but has not put the date, which does not reveal on what date actually he has reviewed these papers. Now, this may be too much microscopic investigation, but then the point is there. Let's be very clear about it. Now, I ask myself a question that in case of a proprietary, there is no bar that a proprietary can audit an listed entity or an entity covered by NFRA. From where he will bring an engagement partner or a review partner. I think nobody has. I leave it to the institute to take it up. The word should not be engagement partner or review partner. It should be any of the chartered accountant. Who is the reviewer basically and who is the engagement partner? It's not necessary. I may be a partner who is looking after tax. I may be a proprietor who is looking after tax, but I have engaged a huge team so far as the audit is concerned. Signing might be done by someone, maybe by me itself. Now, I think what is more important is that the person who is looking after the work, the person whose documents are being reviewed but being signed by someone else. And it has been happening. It's not that it is peculiar. It has been happening. Institute has to take it up with both NFRA, SEBI and someone else. These standards are not meant for the proprietary firms. Let's be very clear about it. Even small partnership firms, the auditing standards. And some of the auditing standards are so big and so complicated, probably it will be very difficult to be followed. And at times, you find that these cannot be followed by the proprietary. And this is one example that I have tried to give. So somewhere or the other, Durgeji, you may have to take it up, basically. The entire planning says, please assess the risk of misstatement either through the fraud or through the errors. How do you do that? Going into your previous objections, it's being overcome through the audit of evidence. Now, one of the things which now I'm again trying to link it with the professional skepticism. I think the point of confirmation was just raised by the DSR, creditors confirmation, trade payables confirmation. Now, it has been happening, believe me, that debtors, the debit side is being confirmed, but the credit side is not being confirmed. And then we say that we followed the alternate procedures. What kind of alternate procedures? How did I verify the genuinity of the party? Only by the ledger operation. Through ledger operation, I can verify anything. Believe me. The question of trade payables, which has come in the Schedule 3 now, is a reflection on our working. Why aging of the trade payables has come in now? Because you were really worried about the debtors, that the debtors are not being paid, the debtors are not being received, these are not being realized, trade receivables are not being realized. But I was never bothered that I purchased something 3 years back or 4 years back at 5 crore rupees, but that payment has not been made, all other payments have been made. Why? Is that not a risk of failure of the internal control, or is there not a possibility of a fraud? Forget about the error. That in one particular year, the profit might have been suppressed through a purchase booking. Why trade payables aging has been done now? I'm just telling you, because the general feeling has been that we have not been bothered about the trade payables, whether the genuinity of the trade payable is there or not. We were not talking about the aging of the trade payables at all. Was that not a part of our professional skepticism? I think it had to be. There were years when share capital, share application money remained as share application money for decades, not for years. Who raised the issue? Nobody raised the issue. There have been cases where share application money exceeded the share authorized share capital itself. Why? How it could happen? Was it not a breach of 50A which was being covered through the share application money? All these things have ultimately resulted in the government coming upon us and enforcing some of the profit, rather telling us that you be professionally skeptical. I will only say one thing, and I will keep on saying this. If we don't do it, some outsider will impose upon us and it will be far more painful. I will give another example of professional skepticism. Now, in the present CARO and the Schedule 3, the question is whether there are any loans which have become overdue. Now, what is happening is that a month before or 2 months before, the term of the loans is being extended. Now, our guidance note does not talk about it. Is it not the evergreening? Is it only when it becomes overdue that if it is payable on 31st of March and if it is not paid on 31st March, if I do it on 1st April, you will say it is evergreening. But if I do it on 1st of March, I will not cover it as evergreening. I think I need to look at it. If the balance sheet of the other party, the other party was actually was not having the ability to repay these loans, it is definitely a case of overgreening if I am extending this particular period. This is what the professional skepticism means. So when I plan the audit, today when I am going to plan the audit, I have to plan the audit from the point of view of the revised Schedule 3 as well as from the point of view of the CARO. And CARO has raised so many issues today, which is unbelievable. And why they have raised the issue? They have raised the issue because we failed to do it. Let's be very clear about it. I think when I talk of professional skepticism, I have availed a loan of 50 crore rupees. I submit a stock statement for all the quarters up to December. I have been submitting stock statements of 75 crore rupees. But suddenly in the balance sheet, whenever these stock statements, the stocks are reflected, these are 55 crore. And if I have to reduce it by 25%, it will not give me the DP. Then I will say it is only this particular date's inability to have DP. If I start getting into those stock statements which were filed, my responsibility under SR 240 will definitely come in. What is happening with the debtor statements which are being filed with the bankers? In one of the cases in which we have held the person guilty, very frankly, sitting in the disciplinary committee, the opening balance of the debtors was 55 crores. The total sale for the year was 205 crores. And the debtors certified in 31st December were 295 crores. Oh, I don't know. Then somebody comes around and says, sir, what we were shown was different. And what has actually transpired is different. No, I can't believe that. There's no way that I'm going to believe it. So what I'm trying to say is when I plan, I have to plan for everything. I have to plan for debtors, I have to plan for creditors very watching. Looking at if the track record has been fine, it's absolutely fine. There's nothing. But if the track record has not been fine, the trade payables have been outstanding for a long period, I must plan for the confirmation of those trade payables. Why not? I must even plan for going to Google in some of the cases and find out whether those parties exist or don't exist. SR 240 does not restrict me. It may say that if I stumble upon information, but stumble upon means what? If I have enough of reason to feel suspicious and I don't want to feel suspicious, then it's not professional skepticism. Let's be very clear about it. I am absolutely invested idea that I should be hard to convince, but not impossible to convince. I should be, under all circumstances, not sitting on false egos that if I raise this particular issue, in that particular case, this ego has to be reported. No, I think that is one bad thing about the auditors. If I raise the issue and the other person is giving a genuine explanation, I must feel satisfied with that. And that raises your stature, because that means that you are humble. You are raising only a professional issue. You are not raising an issue out of the ego. That's very important at the end of the day. Materiality. I think in the audit planning, one of the most important points would be materiality. How do you determine materiality? Materiality at overall level of the balance sheet or materiality for the P&L account, these are going to be different aspects. And as audit committee chairman, one has been asking that question. Because when the auditors come and say that this much amount remains unreported, though detected. So one has to ask, what was your materiality level? How did you determine that materiality level? But that is a part of the audit planning in any case, under all circumstances. And of course, how do you collect audit evidence? That has to be a part of the audit planning. After all, if at all your company, your client has employees who will be subject to gratuity, who will be subject to provident fund, who will be subject to leave encashment, actuarial valuation is going to be there. And if your client is on market on the revaluation model, or if you are suspecting in what happens in professional skepticism, if the other and that's a part of my planning, if the company has invested hugely in certain assets which can be subject matter of impairment, take the case of intangibles in particular. If your client is far more into intangibles, in that case, my skepticism has to come in that I will be testing for the impairment. Why the .com companies went for? And what kind of valuations are being attached to some of the companies I am not naming here for certain reasons today? The company will continue to make losses for the next 5 years, but the valuation, you look at it. I don't know. How do we look at it? Look at the Paytm issue, what has happened. That's a subject matter which is known to everybody today. So I can talk about it. So when valuation is a matter of impairment in certain cases, that has to be a part of my planning. So that is again understanding the client. I think to me, the most important aspect is understanding the entity, the I'm going to audit. Without that, there can be no plan at all. If my last 2 years or 3 years are reflecting that my work in progress is increasing, what will be my professional skepticism and planning? And I will get into work in progress. I can't leave it there. Because most of the NPAs which have arisen in the banking sector have been where the work in progress kept on increasing gradually. Because work in progress is more difficult to be verified. You can verify raw material, you can verify finished good. But what is most difficult to be verified is the work in progress. And work in progress keeps on rising. So that becomes a matter of planning. And that becomes a matter of the professional skepticism for that matter. And I think Lalit talked of plan B. To me, the plan B is most important in the case of the confirmation, whether in respect of the debtors or in respect of the creditors or in respect of the loans, whether in respect of the advances. If you have not received the confirmation, what is your plan B? What kind of alternate procedure you are going to apply? Very easy to say we have applied alternate procedures. Let's be very clear about it. Each one of us says I have applied alternate procedure. What alternate procedures? Did you visit those premises? Maybe one of those premises or two of the premises? None. But it happens. What is more important is when I plan, I have to plan B. There's no doubt about it. Now, when I talk of the professional skepticism, and one of the points which has come through the revised schedule 3 and CARO is with regard to the capital work in progress. If your capital work in progress keeps on increasing, and there is hardly any capitalization. What can be the reason? You are either capitalizing your administrative overheads, which should not have been capitalized to it, or in any case, your capital work in progress has to be subjected to the testing for impairment. If certain capital work in progress was to be completed in 1 year and if it is still outstanding for a period of 3 years, you will not test it for impairment. That's professional skepticism. And that's a part of my audit planning also, for that matter. So I think one will have to link audit planning with the professional skepticism under all circumstances. There can be no audit planning without professional skepticism, to my mind. Look at the ratios. Now, one of the points which has been given now in the revised schedule 3 is the 11 ratios which have been asked to be computed. But then they have asked you one question also. Whether numerator and denominator are the same, the components of the numerator and denominator are the same as were in the last year. So that is a part of the audit planning. No. That also you will have to verify. It should not happen. Some of the components in the current assets were not there in the last year. You included this year and then say my current ratios improved. Or some of the things which were not there in the last year in the trade paper you have included and you say my current ratios come down. That can't happen. And even if your current ratio has improved, I think professional skepticism has to ask you, why did it improve? Did it improve because my stocks got built up or my debtors got built up? No, that's not a very good sign. Despite the fact that the current ratio has actually improved in respect thereof. Then, one of the I think as a part of the planning, I will always tell my students or my staff, that by notes to accounts rule per level. To me, the audit planning has to come from the notes to accounts of the client in the last year and the current year notes also, in some of the cases. Because audit planning is not something which is fixed. I think the ideas have raised this particular issue. It is not something which is fixed. You have to allow the engagement team the free hand to change the audit plan, of course, with the concurrence of the engagement partner. Why? If the premises of the have been ready during the year, and that fact comes to your knowledge, then will you not like to find out why these were rated? And if these premises were rated and they say that they have found out unrecorded stock or unrecorded cash or unrecorded investments in the books of accounts, then will your audit not undergo a change? Will definitely undergo a change. Your planning will undergo a change. Your professional skepticism will undergo a change because you will have to test the internal controls absolutely differently in that particular case. All because to me, I can tell you, NPA level in banks post-COVID, if certain bank is telling me that post-COVID my NPA level has remained the same, or certain NBFC is telling me my NPA level has remained the same, my professional skepticism will say, please get into it. It cannot, because the way the things have happened, this cannot. Because all customers were facing problems unless all the accounts have been restructured. And if the accounts have been restructured, then the total amount of the restructured accounts, the number of the restructured accounts and the will go up in the notes to accounts. And then the additional provision, whatever has to be made in respect of the restructured accounts, that will go up. So what I am trying to say is that you have enough of information to debate. And if as an auditor, you can look at the other information which you can contradict somewhere or the other, I think that's professional skepticism, which we all agree in any case. Now, it can be in the minute book, it can be in the board report, it can be anywhere for that matter, in the notes to accounts. I think RPTs have already been talked about, related party transactions have been talked about. Management representations, the maximum professional skepticism, if I have to exercise, this will be with regard to the MRs, with regard to the management representation. I can't accept that at the face value. I will have to test for its veracity and accuracy. That is what SA 580 also lays down for that matter. So particularly my professional skepticism will be at the maximum when I look at a particular advance of a huge amount remaining outstanding for a long time, and it is still being treated as an advance, not as a loan. I think this question, this inquiry was already there under section 1431, but we were not making it. Now it has been brought in Schedule 3 as well as in Caro. The other company's turnover is 5 crores, and you have placed an order with the company for 20 crores. You have given him an order of, you have given him an advance of 10 crore rupees. What kind of is it an advance or a loan? I think that is your professional skepticism at the end of the day. So these are all areas which I could think of in terms of what is professional skepticism. Professional skepticism can be exercised in respect of any item, believe me. But audit planning is not possible without professional skepticism. If I do not have professional skepticism, then my planning is likely to fail in the longer run. Let's be very clear about it in those cases. That's all, Durgesh, that I would like to say. Thank you very much for the opportunity. And particularly giving me an opportunity to deal with the subject when Lalit and Deviya Saab are there.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chopra sir. In fact, with lots of example, you have explained what is professional skepticism and how professional skepticism is going to impact the audit planning. Both runs hand in hand. Without skepticism, planning cannot be done. And you want to use the planning, then you need to use the skepticism also. Now, there is a time for the question, which we have got some from the participants and we too have with us. So I'll begin with CA Lalit Banerjee. The first questions to you. The audit planning is perceived as a compliance of standards on auditing, where the auditor normally repeat the standard auditing strategy and plan available in the last year's file. Take the sections and document the same. The audit plan is for the auditor. Why do we need to give emphasis to it? Rather, we as auditor need to spend time on gathering evidences.
I think this question has already been answered by Chopra ji. He has spoken so much about it. It is not about gathering evidence. Actually, the approach to audit that people take is simply go and gather evidence is not the right approach. What Mr. Chopra ji explained is, please understand the entity, and the standards are there to help us. You read the standard, it tells you what are the things you need to understand. Chopra ji talked about ratios. There is a concept of doing analytical reviews. Understand the controls. Each year that has to be done, because change is something that keeps on happening. The entity that you saw in the previous year is not today the entity that you are seeing, right? Of course, you will start with your last year's objections. What were the significant matters? How did you resolve? You will see how the company has changed, how the environment has changed, what are the new regulations that have come in place. Is there a new line of business that the company has started? Is there a litigation that has occurred? What are the significant decisions that the board has taken? Whole lot of information is to be gathered. And then a thought process. These are the things that I need to check because there is a risk. Right? So it is not about, see, what you are going to do comes after all this brainstorming, after all this analysis of the information that you gather, after you have determined materiality. So last year, the entity was a 10 crore profit entity. Today it is a 50 crore profit entity and it is an unlisted entity. How would you determine whether you will work on the same materiality? No, you will reassess the materiality. When you go and reassess the materiality, you will want to know how the profit has increased. Is it because of one of big transactions? If it is because of one of big transaction, you may want to ignore that transaction to calculate the profitability, because you will as part of your strategy, you may want to audit that big transaction separately and keep the audit materiality at the same level as the previous year, right? So everything has to be first processed, and then what is that you are going to do? What you are going to do is audit program, which also will change. So Chopra Saab mentioned this in the example that, COVID 2020 is the year end, March 21 lockdown announces, right? All our physical stock takes that we had planned to do, cut-off procedures, you wanted to cash count, factories were locked, nothing could have been done, situation totally changed, right? Now, whatever we had planned, we will do stock take on 31st of March, we will do cut-off on 31st of March, we will send our teams to the audit clients to do control testing in April, first week, second week, third week, everything went for a toss. It had to be replanned, right? So, think about it, plan, it is not tick in the box, use standards, they give you guidance. Even if it's a small audit, once you go through the standard, just simply apply your mode, bring your conscious to the fact, have I considered this in this audit? Have I considered this in not? And if you find something, maybe you can say, I have considered this, nothing found, I have considered it, this is the issue I need to examine. I think you will land there.
Thank you, Lalitji. So what I feel and I understand is, if the audit planning is to be done in a perfect way, one need to walk through all the line and all the process of the entity. If you don't walk through and you don't understand, the planning is not possible. Very rightly said by you. Now over to Hasmukh Dediaji. In what circumstances the auditor may need to modify the overall audit strategy and audit plan? Does it change the nature, time, and extent of the audit procedures? Though many examples have been given by the Chopraji, but I am just seeking a clarification from you that in those kind of examples, how this can take place. Again, sir, the problem.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry for this thing. I would like to remember that Lalit Kumarji in his initial this thing mentioned that planning is not a discrete exercise. It is continuous and iterative process, entire course of the audit. If we remember that in spirit, there could be n number of circumstances which would give rise to relook at the planning, relook at the audit plan, or relook at the overall audit strategy. COVID-19 is the best example which has been spoken about. We all have known it. We all have practiced it. I'll not speak on it. A new regulations coming in. A new being adopted by the company. Say earlier some different ERP was there which was not functioning perfectly, and company has put in place a new ERP which is still kind of, the company people itself are still kind of fumbling with, completely get heck of it. And the migration audit is showing some of the lapses. In that such situation, it is not correct that you stick to your original audit strategy. You have to change, you have to modify to suit these circumstances. About the regulation change, I'll give two examples. Chopra Sahab has spoken many examples of Caro and Schedule 3. From those only, I'll give two examples. One important reporting aspect has come into audit report as well as this thing is about round tripping of funds, whether lending or borrowing. What audit procedures we can follow for this, we can do for this. Earlier we were not, okay, even if we were doing it, we were doing a normal exercise. Now that you are proactively reporting on this matter, of course, based on the management representation, but that management representation itself, you are putting it to a test. Obviously, your audit strategy and audit plan for that particular matter will have to change for that matter, because you are reporting on it in your main report, a very, very important factor, which many auditors have kind of turned a blank eye or doing kind of a copy paste, which is not a correct view, because this is very important reporting aspect. Another reporting aspect which would be coming into force from the next year is about the backdated entry audit trail systems. Again, you'll have to see your audit test whether they are capable enough to enable you to report on this matter. The matter is not as simple as you put in some IT guy and let him decide. There are large number of companies who have operating systems, say for example, a bank operating system, a loan management system, and a loan originating system. Then there is an accounting system which could be SAP or Oracle or Sun or whatever. From the loan management system, large number of entries are system pushed entries as a batch processing at the day end or a night processing or a next day or weekly processing. In this scenario, this backdating matter, whether you will confine only to the accounting system, the Oracle or the Sun, or you would also see it to the loan management system. That's where, like large number of backdating happens. In actual practice, it happens. Some of them are for valid reasons, some of them are not for so valid reasons. Your audit strategy, your audit plan will have to change for this. There is no doubt about it. One more example, again, NBFC industry. Up till last year, NBFC industry was kind of not allowed, but it was something taken for granted that it is okay if they do month-end proceeding for calculation of DPD, days past due. RBI has now come up very strongly to put NBFCs at par with the banks. That you have to do it on a day end basis. Time for that, I think the time for that has been extended. It is given till this September. So from this September, all NBFCs will be doing DPD, this thing, on a day end basis. Is the company that I have audited last year, which was doing month-end processing and reporting NPA or reporting the stage 1, stage 2, stage 3 provisioning under ECL, was doing as that manner. My audit procedure, can it be same for this year? No. I'll have to see companies' preparedness on a day-end processing. I'll have to see whether the systems are throwing proper reporting. If systems are not throwing proper reporting, what is the alternate workout that company has done for that to comply with the RBI regulations requirement? And what are the audit procedures that I can walk through the company's processes in absence of a system-generated report? So n number of examples can be given. Audit is a dynamic thing. I remember ICI president saying audit is a serious business. If you do not have wherewithal or capacity, do not venture into it. And therefore, and the business today is becoming more complex. Business today is becoming, wide variety. And in that, you cannot remain with a static plan, which is determined at the beginning of the year or beginning of the audit and then stay with it. No, you will be doing injustice to your audit process.
Thank you, Hasmukh Bhai. Looking to the scarcity of time available with us, my humble request would be, we have some more questions. Please restrict yourself for a minute or two maximum when you are responding to the question. Now, I take, and it's a request to all, not to one only. My another question is to, again, Lalitji, as an audit expert, and as you said that it has been said for you that you are the head of the quality at the very large firm. What do you think are the additional considerations that need to be kept in mind while preparing an audit plan for new client engagements? What goes into the documentations of an audit plan? Yeah, just mute, unmute.
I think there are additional considerations that go into planning the audit for a new client. But two things that we must always remember is additional means that things that you will be doing over and above that you do for an old client. And each year's audit has to be with the same rigor, right? So the only difference largely I see is the changes in effort that may be required when you have a first year audit client versus a second year audit client, because if processes are documented, you just need to edit those processes for the changes that might have occurred. If the industry understanding is documented, then you just need to update it, right? So that change in effort. But what standards, of course, require you when you are taking on a new client, you will have to perform client and engagement acceptance procedures, which will be much detailed than what you will perform for client and engagement continuation. So acceptance in the first year is much more detailed. Continuation may be a little less rigorous and detailed. So that's one difference. The other thing that you should also consider in planning the audit is, it happens many times that you are going and you are asked to present a proposal for the audit. As an audit client acceptance or engagement acceptance, you will discuss significant accounting and auditing issues with the management. And possibly you will be asked on your approach, how you are going to deal with it. I think it is important when such issues are discussed, those are carefully evaluated at the time of client and engagement acceptance, should also be discussed with those charged with governance. I think in order to demonstrate that your selection was fair and independent, despite the issues being discussed at the time of evaluation, that you tell audit committee that when we were being appointed as auditors, management had asked us about our views on these accounting and auditing matters. We evaluated our, the matters, and these are our views. So somebody should not be able to later on challenge that because you agreed to a particular accounting or auditing position, you've been selected, right? You might have to communicate with the previous auditor. You have to under the code of ethics. That's another thing that you will have to do. If regulations permit, you may want to plan review of working papers of the previous auditors. Currently in India, practice is not there. You will also have to plan to test the opening balances. And when we say opening balances, you have to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence for the opening balance sheet as well. And definition of sufficient appropriate evidence does not change for opening or closing balance. It remains the same. You have to evaluate whether the accounting policies that are followed by the company are in accordance with the financial reporting framework, right? So if policies are not in accordance with the framework, then possibly there are mistakes, accounting errors that need to be corrected. You may also want to consider whether you want to have an engagement quality control reviewer, right? So these are some of the additional matters that get added to your planning when you're doing an audit planning for a new client. But rest, everything remains the same, which means you have to understand the entity, understand the controls, and follow the process that has been set. So that's it, sir.
Thank you, Laliji. Why the change is needed and what care is to be taken when you are planning for a new client, and whatever you are discussing with that has to be documented properly so you can have that thing duly recorded. Now over to Chopra ji. Should the auditor discuss the audit planning approach with the management in advance? Do you think it makes the audit execution better or compromise the effectiveness of the audit? Industry perspective, sir, as far as the audit and auditor's perspective is there, auditee and auditor's perspective, some part has been dealt by Laliji, but what does, as the audit committee chairman, how you look into it? Please do explain.
Thank you, Durgesh. You see, I raised this issue. When the auditors come before us, we ask them about the maturity levels, we ask them about the sampling level. Now, we also ask them, how did they assess their risks? It's not that we don't ask them the questions. It's always better for the auditor to come before the audit committee and tell them as to how they have actually done it. It will always be better both for the client as well as for the auditor. You see, ये कोई लुका छुपी का खेल तो है नहीं. ऑडिटर ने आना, इंफॉर्मेशन मांगनी है, क्लाइंट को देनी है. The client must be mentally prepared as to what are the areas which the auditor also considers to be critical, and then that information has to be provided. So I think management team in any case, audit committee के सामने सारी की सारी चीजें आएंगी. That may not be possible, but so far as the management team is concerned, I think he has to go and, after all, he will seek all information from the management team. And when he seeks information, he will sit with them and talk to them about the strategy, about the entire planning that they have done. So to my mind, it is always better to do it with the client. ये कोई वो नहीं है कि हमने अगर आप हिंदुस्तान में रहे ना, तो यहाँ पे वो पुलिस वाला वो झाड़ियों में बैठता है कैमरा लेके कि भी इसकी स्पीड ओवर है या नहीं है। अगर आप सिंगापुर में जाओ तो वहां पे हर टर्निंग पे लिखा हुआ यू आर अंडर सीसीटीवी सर्विलेंस। I think you have to be very clear to the client as to what you are going to do. Let him be prepared for it. Where is the harm? This will always help in establishing the credibility of the audit, and it will be a better mutual understanding.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for the sharing perspective of the industry into it. Now over to again Lalit ji. How does audit planning work in case of the joint auditors? Do the auditors sit together or do they plan individually? And what do you suggest should be done so that planning becomes more effectively? It's all about planning with the joint auditors.
Yeah. I think joint audit is a wonderful system that our country has. The way planning is, the way the standard is structured is it envisages that planning is done jointly, which essentially means that when an audit planning happens in a joint scenario, both the auditors are aware of the risks that are there. They have carried out their risk assessment and shared their findings and results. What are the risks and what is their assessment of risk of material misstatement? They develop the overall strategy also together, which means that when I say strategy, it also includes which area will be done by which of the joint auditors. They allocate the work and maintain a constant coordination between themselves, because if there is information that comes to knowledge of joint auditor A, which is relevant for joint auditor B also to consider the area, so he should be able to tell or she should be able to tell, right? All significant matters should be discussed together. Preliminary analytical review that is carried out should be carried out together, right? And possibly a discussion on materiality also. What is being considered as material for the financial statement? So if joint auditor A and B are not on the same page in terms of materiality, auditor A may conclude that a misstatement of 50 lakhs is not material, whereas auditor B could be of an opinion that even 25 lakhs could be a material misstatement, right? So the risk of not matching up. I think, and on an overall basis, joint auditors should work as one team with a lot of coordination. The only thing that our standards do not require is, and I look at it that way, is don't get into the working papers of each other, but work in tandem together. And that includes planning as well. So that's the response on joint audits.
Thank you. A good reply from their side. Joint auditors is the planning has to be done in a proper way, and it is going to be more important when in the new company law bill and the which is going to come, probably joint audit may become the compulsory, and it will have more importance at that point of time where there will be more number of joint auditors. So now over to Chopra ji. How does an auditor ensure maintaining professional skepticism through the planning and performance of the audit?
I don't think that professional skepticism requires planning. Planning requires professional skepticism, if you really ask me. Because it is the planning which will bring in, the auditor has to have the value of professional skepticism. So it is not the other way around, to my mind. So I am very clear on it, and I think I have given enough number of examples. But before I get into this little bit, I would like to actually go back a little bit on what Lalit has actually replied. Joint auditors. Unfortunately, the joint auditors have to learn to work together. I think that's very important. and to discuss together. And the management should not be able to divide you. I think that's very, very important. To me, the key of the success of a joint auditor will be where the management is unable to divide you. To me, that's going to be the key to the success of the joint audit. So far as the common aspects are concerned, which are in the knowledge of everybody, there I think each one of them is responsible. When I think Lalit said it very correctly, if you are auditing a bank, the maturity level has to be the same, and this picking up of the sample has to be in a similar fashion. The branch auditors may have their own maturity levels. You can't have that maturity level at the branch level, what you are having at the central level.
Yes.
But at the central level, you will have the same maturity levels. You cannot get into the working papers of everyone, but you have to keep everyone informed about the major developments. If you come across, I will give you one example. We came across in one of the banks that in agricultural loans, there were a lot of systemic problems that even if the payments had not been received for years together, the system was not making them NPAs. So we went in the joint auditors meeting and told them, and believe me, virtually every auditor could bring it out, but the same thing is happening in the various regions. So wherever there are certain aspects of concern, which are of, I think of mutual nature, you should bring it to the knowledge of the other auditor. If you come to know that someone else, it may not be in writing, someone is auditing a particular account which you come across the news item that it can run into problem, you can tell that gentleman, professional skepticism there. The success of the joint auditor will depend upon the faith that we have in each other and the inability of the management to divide you. I think I'm very, very clear on it. Managements at times try to divide the joint auditors. It is for the joint auditors to remain together. And unless the fee levels of the joint auditors are the same, they will get divided. That also I can tell you. If someone is paid 20%, other is paid 80%, they're bound to get divided somewhere or the other. I think if there are 3 auditors, all the 3 auditors should get the same level of fee. Maybe a little bit of a difference, but if you are having a major difference, I think it will destroy the concept of the joint audit. That's one area that I wanted to comment on. Again, coming back to professional skepticism, I think to me, if an auditor does not have the professional skepticism, no audit can be effective. I'm not saying that you start with the notion that there is a fraud, but you have to start with the notion that there can be a possibility that certain systems might have been overridden by the management or by the employees. And wherever the systems are overridden by the management or by the key managerial personnel, those frauds are difficult to detect. And I think that is where the professional skepticism comes into play in a very, very large measure. So if you have the professional skepticism, you will be able to successfully do an audit. And if you don't have the professional skepticism, mark my words, you will run into problems, if not today, tomorrow. Because when the things are going good, when the going is good, nobody bothers about it. But the day one thing goes wrong, in that particular case, then all other things get into the problem area.
So thank you, sir. So very rightly said, we must use the professional skepticism because it is our questioning ability, and that is needed. Without that, we will be into trouble, which is rightly put by you. Now over to Hasmukh Bhai. Hasmukh Bhai, how is the professional skepticism different from the professional judgment, and how the professional skepticism should be evidenced? So I need your views on this, how this can be dealt with. You are again, sir, some technical hitch or glitch is there with your system today.
Hello?
Yes, now it is okay.
Yeah, sorry. I'll deal with the second question first because that is the hot topic of the day. For justice, it is very famous that it is not enough that justice is done. It is to be seen that justice is done. That applies to the quality audit. It is not enough that quality audit is done, but it is to be seen that quality audit is done. If you claim that all through your audit process and even in the reporting, you had exercised professional skepticism, how would you prove it to others after the audit is concluded, after the report is given? To others include regulators, to others include government authorities and all that. The best way is to document whatever questions at whatever level you have raised, document in the form of not merely a mail communication, but in the form of whatever documentation methodology used by your firm. Some firms have, like meeting getting minuted and minutes are sent to the client immediately that during our meeting, we discussed this, you responded to us this, and in your response, we raised this further requirements which we are awaiting from you. Such documents would evidence that you had exercised the professional skepticism. In some other cases, the responses or the evidences given by the management itself would form part of the evidence, and your sub-questions or questions arising based on the responses given or the evidence is given, if those are documented properly, then it can be said that it can be evidence that I had asked all these questions because all these questions arose to me in as part of my exercising of professional skepticism. These were the responses and these were the evidences I further checked. This is how my audit strategy or audit plan was changed to check this, and that's how I close the matter. Accepting it or not accepting it, of course, would get reported either in the audit committee presentation or in the report as a qualification or emphasis matter. So therefore, it is important for the auditors to see that it is evidence. The larger part of the regulatory observation that we are seeing in NEPRA is auditors' inability to demonstrate that they had asked all these questions through the documentation. So it is very, very important. Coming to the second part, professional skepticism and professional judgments both are required to conduct the assurance engagement in a qualitative manner. But both are not same. Although both are complementary to each other, as Chopra sir said, professional skepticism is also necessary right from planning to execution to reporting stage. And therefore, judgment is something that in course of audit, you will have to make several judgments. What is your materiality statement? Which employee or which audit team you will allot which work, what timeline, how will you finish it, when you do the wrap-up, with whom you do the wrap-up, in MR letter, what additional matters you would like to put it, management to assert to you. All these are professional judgments, which suppose management has got some experts' opinion, some valuers' opinion, some actuaries' opinion, how do you test them? All this will form part of the professional judgment. In all these professional judgments, skepticism plays an important role.
Yeah, thank you, Asmukh Bhai, for dealing with the professional skepticism and professional judgment. And more importantly, as you rightly said, that what work has been done, it has to be shown also. And that can only be possible while you collect the evidence, keep the evidence ready with you, and show it to the world wherever any problem or is coming to the auditors, and it becomes a savior for the auditor when all the evidences and documentations are with us. With this, I will again move with this probably a last or maybe one more to Chopra ji. We have seen, sir, that the quality review reports by audit regulators in respect of certain audit engagements have questioned professional skepticism. As per the report, the auditors have simply relied on management assumption without independently verifying the veracity of such assumptions and has failed in challenging the same. How do we define the extent of reliance that can be placed on the management, assumptions, internal auditors, expert in ensuring professional skepticism, or the internal audit standards which are there will also help into it? What do you think?
There seems to be some problem with the connectivity.
Sir, आपको नहीं आई आवाज?
मेरे ख्याल किसी को भी नहीं आई होगी, आइए बाकियों को।
मैं अब वापस should I repeat the question again? Yeah.
एक आपका क्वेश्चन मुझे थोड़ा सा समझ आ गया प्रोफेसर। The regulators are saying that the auditor has not exercised the due professional skepticism. अगर यही आपका क्वेश्चन है तो I can answer that.
हाँ sir, this is the question, and simultaneously I try to add. We do have some internal audit standards. Are they going to help into the audit quality and professional skepticism?
दुर्गेश जी, जहाँ तक regulator का सवाल है, so far as the regulators are concerned, I can only say that regulator may be justified at times that they say that you are accepting the management representation as it is. You have a very large number of balance sheets. Forget about this if you go to the tax audit, because when I talk of everything, I talk of everything which concerns the tax audit. If an auditor writes that stocks are as per verification and valuation by the management, what does it mean? This is ridiculous. And mark my words, this is a practice which is prevalent in a very massive way. And somewhere or the other, the institute has to come down very heavily on it. There is no way that it can be done that way. Similarly, the cash verification has been said the same way. Cash as verified and certified by the management. How you can say that? There is no way that it can be said that way. So, and SF 580 itself is very clear that you cannot rely upon whatever management represents. Management represents, it says all debtors are realizable. But what you find is that bill number to the same party, the bill number 125 has been paid, 126 has been paid, 128 has been paid, 129 has been paid, but 127 has not been paid. Why? Either there would be some dispute or the goods have not reached the party, or there could be some dispute with regard to the quality. Similarly, as I was giving the example with regard to the trade payable or with regard to the interest being built up, I think these are all the matters where you have to exercise professional skepticism. You can't say that whatever management has said that I will go by that. Management says that there are goods in transit. I will give you another example. Management says that there are goods in transit, which is a very large amount. Now, if the goods have not been received till the time your audit is over in the next 1 month, how do you rely upon that? There are a number of cases where they show checks in hand. I am not saying there are small number of cases. There are many cases where the client shows in the balance sheet a very huge checks in hand being received, and they say checks in hand with a credit to the debtors. Now, why it is being done? Because they want to show lesser of the receivables, for that matter. Now, my duty is there that when I go there, I see that these checks have been realized in the next 7 days. These days, rather, the checks don't take even 3 days, for that matter. If the checks have not been realized, 50% of the checks have not been realized till time. I have completed the audit on 15th or 20th or 30th of the next month. How do I really agree to those checks in hand? These are all matters of skepticism. To run you problem those cases.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, sir. So,
Hello.
thank you. Hello. I'm audible, sir?
Yes.
I'm audible?
Yeah. You are audible now.
Yes. Thank you very much, sir, for replying to the questions which were there in the mind of us, and how it is being dealt by the regulators, and what care should be taken by the auditors in those kind of scenario. Now, sir, rapid fire kind of things. I would request all the three, what you have in your mind. And I'll start with Laliji. You have to list down 3 threats to the professional skepticism. Very fast, 3 threats.
Sir, I'll not include independence because it has been talked about enough. Independence definitely. Competence is the second one. And the third one is, I would say, the cost or the remuneration that we get for audit, right? So quality should be dealing with the remuneration that you are getting on the audit.
Yes. Thank you. 3 threats from your side, Chopra sir, which are important. Chopra sir. Hasmubhai, you can tell what are the 3 threats which you feel. Again, आवाज नहीं आ रही है सर आपकी.
The 3
Hello.
आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही सर, मेरी आवाज जा रही है दोनों जगह. My voice is going, but I think there is some disturbance at your end. So if now you can speak, sir, Chopra sir, if it is possible.
Am I audible now? Am I audible now?
Yeah, Hasmubhai.
Yeah.
My professional skepticism.
Yeah.
किसकी है ये? किसका क्वेश्चन है?
Sir, it is the question to all. 3 things, 3 threats which you feel. 3, Laliti has said. If you have different threats which you can tell.
Can I use the time?
I think Chopra sir's connection is little poor.
Can I? Am I
Yes,
audible?
please.
Am I
Yes,
audible?
you are audible.
So again, in my initial talk, I had enough talked on independence, so I will not take that, as you also rightly said. The one important threat after the independence is the technical competence, not only of the industry, not only of the client's business that you are auditing, but also of the auditing literature. If that competence is not there, your skepticism would be under question. The third challenge that I believe the weak reporting hierarchy within the firm. If the juniors are doing the audit and seniors are only kind of, issuing the reports, if that kind of a hierarchy is there, there is no way you can claim to be a skepticism practicing person. Hierarchy should be, multiple levels of the review. They based on the size of the audit, regardless of the remuneration, of course, that you get for audit fees, which Lalitji rightly mentioned. But if there is a manager level and a partner level issue, and for the listed entity, there is a hot review by a QC partner also, then chances are more that you are a better skepticism practicing firm than others.
Thank you. Sir, now I think Chopra sir is connected. So 3 threats to professional professional skepticism from your side. Beside whatever is being told by these 2. And if you are agreeing with the same, fine. Sir, you are on mute.
Now I'm unmuted.
Yeah, you are unmuted.
The kind of NPA level that we have in the banking industry, to my mind, our main threat is with regard to whatever statements we are filing with the bankers. Let's be very clear about it. To me, that's paramount, and that is eroding our credibility in a very, very big way. The second thing is that what kind of quality control system we have within the organization, and in any case, what kind of ethical practices we are following within the organization to ensure that we remain professionally skeptical. Basically, that would include, in any case, the independence also. And of course, I think the point which has been made by DDS is very, very relevant. the hierarchy in the organization. I think that's very important. So I would like to end up here. To me, the biggest threat is our credibility with regard to the financial institutions and other various stakeholders. Unless we can do something to that, unless we can bring in professional skepticism to a particular level so that we can meet their expectations, I think we are under a severe threat.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Again, last questions. 3 takeaways with respect to audit planning and professional skepticism in today's scenario. So, starting with Hasmukh Bhai, 3 takeaways today. Very fast.
So there is no alternative to independence, independence of mind, independence of appearance, and independence not only of the firm, but entire audit team, right from the audit manager, senior manager to article clerk who are doing the audit. That independence is first important thing one has to inculcate in the mind and character of the at the top.
Yes, yes.
The tone at the top and the culture within the firm of giving a free hand to the audit partners and the audit team, and how much audit partners listen to QC is one of the important takeover, because QC is, like in most of the firm, is just sitting in a corner, no client interaction. His role starts after the audit report is issued. If that is the QC, it is a cover-up exercise. It is not QC in spirit.
Thank you. Over to Chopra, sir. 3 takeaways with respect to audit planning.
I would only like to say, to me, when we are talking of planning, there can be no set format, basically. I think each year the audit planning can undergo a change. Look at the COVID. When the physical verification could not be conducted, otherwise it was being conducted through various other means, basically. So you had to change your entire verification processes for that matter. So I think there can be no set standards, set format so far as the audit planning is concerned. And professional skepticism, audit planning without professional skepticism will have no meaning, very frankly. Your audit planning must demonstrate the areas in which the professional skepticism has crept in and has to find the place. And thirdly, of course, the independence part. I think that's very important, that unless you are independent, nothing is going to work. And probably the planning or professional skepticism will take a backseat, and the other thing will come into play.
Thank you. Last to Lalitji.
Thank you. I think spend a lot of time and energy and competence in planning. That's number 1. Devote time and energy. Second is, when you are looking at things, ask 3 questions. What am I looking at? Is it what I should be looking at? And what is that I'm not looking at?
Fantastic. Thank you, Lalitji. I think this is going to make a lot of difference. And the virtual presence of all the members who were there or who are there, I think this is going to build their skill set, and they'll use the professional skepticism in planning the audit and do the audit properly with the quality consciousness. So thank you, Chopra sir. Thank you, Hasmukh Bhai. Thank you, Lalitji, for being with us today in this Quality Cafe, which is the 4th one in line. We will continue to have these kind of Quality Cafe for the audit and auditors and auditee too. So ultimately, the object of ours is to achieve the best quality in the audit. We can convey the message to all the practicing chartered accountants who are into the audit and assurance services. With this, thank you all for being with us. Thank you, Ruchika, for managing the show, coordinating with all the panelists, and making this Quality Cafe possible. Thank you all. And thank you all the virtually present members. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Durgesh Bhai. As the recording